To what extent would be willing to risk Ferrari in order to win at home? And what would happen if I told you that they are carrying a piece that barely managed to pass the FIA inspections and that everything could change it in Monza? Ferrari does not run the Italy Grand Prix like any other team. For them, Monza is not simply another track of the calendar. It is the spiritual heart of the Scuderia, the place where every decision, every technical sacrifice and every drop of sweat looks for a single thing: pay tribute to its history. This year is not any. 50 years have passed since Niki Lauda gave Ferrari his first pilot title of the modern era in 1975. That championship not only rewrote the history of the team, he also redefined what he meant winning with the rampant Cavallino. Lauda changed the way of working, of thinking, of developing. It was the beginning of a professional era within a team that until then lived more of passion than of precision. Today, half a century later, Ferrari is at a similar crossroads, trapped between tradition and the urgent need to adapt to a F1 that no longer respects myths. Because losing in Monza, with Hamilton and Leclerc on board, in front of a sea of red flags waving in the stands, would be more than a technical defeat. It would be public humiliation. One more proof that Ferrari has not yet found the way back to the top. Therefore, despite having cut all development for the rest of the year, the team has diverted resources, wind tunnel hours and technical talent only to prepare this weekend. That is why they have created a piece of very high risk that can mark a before and after. Because in Monza it is not just about adding points, it's about sending a message. In Formula 1, the difference between winning and losing can be measured in millimeters. And that is exactly what the new rear wing of the SF25 represents. Millimeters of carbon, curvature, design, which could transform Ferrari into a real threat on the lines of Monza or, on the contrary, in the protagonist of a new technical scandal. The leaks leave no doubt. This piece is not a simple evolution of the aerodynamic package. It is a radical commitment, secretly designed and validated to counter relish. One of those decisions that are not made thinking about the championship, but in history. Ferrari has developed two completely different configurations for this weekend. The first, more traditional, is a revised version of the spoiler they used in 2024, optimized for aerodynamic reliability and coherence, tested during Pirelli's tire test sessions. This specification represents security, logic. But the second option is a declaration of war on aerodynamic resistance. It is a rear wing cut to the limit of the regulatory with minimal surface sections, conceived to maximize friction with the air and allow the SF25 to wheel on the straight lines of Monza with a tip difficult to match by McLaren or Red Bull. This extreme design is no accident. Monza is the temple of speed, the circuit with less aerodynamic load of the year. Here does not matter so much curve efficiency and the ability to reach maximum speed as quickly as possible. Therefore, the wing design was polished obsessively so that each millimeter of its structure fulfilled a single purpose: cut the air like a scalpel. Everything unnecessary was eliminated. Everything that could generate drag, discarded. The result is a wing that, in the words of an internal engineer, does not fly, slides. But such an ambitious design does not arrive without risks. The technical regulations of the FIA are clear regarding flexion under load. Any aerodynamic element that is significantly deformed with air pressure is considered illegal, since it gives dynamic advantages not allowed. And that was precisely the problem. In its first evaluations, the FIA detected that Ferrari's trim spoiler was flexed more than allowed in high-load conditions. The reason? The extreme reduction of material made it too sensitive to pressure. Too light. Too dangerous. Ferrari had to act quickly. Redesign internal structural support, strengthen anchor, and convince the FIA through simulation data and static tests that this new configuration respected the technical limits. To achieve this, the team even convinced an engineer who had already decided to leave Maranello to stay a few more weeks and supervise the final process. His specific knowledge of wing behavior was vital to save homologation. The fact that this spoiler has been approved in the limit of the regulation makes it a double-edged sword. In theory, it is completely legal. But in practice, any tracking anomaly, a suspicious vibration, an onboard camera showing excessive flexion, a formal protest of another team could trigger formal investigation and even a disqualification. The margin of error is minimal, the exhibition total. And it is precisely what makes it so fascinating. This spoiler is not just an advanced engineering piece. It is a symbol of everything Ferrari represents at this time: audacity, risk, despair contained. And it is also a proof of how, in Formula 1, technique and emotion are intertwined to the point of becoming indistinguishable. Because when a mythical team plays so much Even a piece of carbon fiber can carry the weight of an entire nation on itself. The conflict point was clear from the beginning: aerodynamic flexion. Under the current rules, any element of the car that is deformed significantly under dynamic pressure, such as the wind at high speeds, can be considered illegal if that deformation improves performance. The objective of these regulations is to prevent the equipment from designing active pieces that change shape to adapt to the career conditions, something that used to occur in past times with flexible ailerons that were flattened in line to reduce resistance and curved in curve to generate more load. And that is exactly what the FIA feared of the new rear wing of the SF25. In his initial tests, Ferrari's trim design presented deformation patterns that touched and perhaps exceeded acceptable limits. The wing was too fine, too light. Some more degrees of curvature could transform it into a dynamic piece and therefore illegal. The risk was huge, and the potential scandal even greater. Ferrari knew it. Therefore, before officially presenting the piece for homologation, they made multiple internal simulations using computational fluid dynamics, CFD, combined with structural tests in the test bench. Even so, the results were ambiguous. Everything depended on the measurement method that the FIA used in its real evaluation. And here a little discussed dimension comes into play, but essential in F1: technical policy. Aware of that context, those responsible for the SF25 did not want to leave loose ends. The wing redesign included the incorporation of materials with a specific distribution of the elasticity module, that is, carbon combinations and resins that offer directional stiffness, inflexible in the vertical but with a certain horizontal game to tolerate lateral loads without compromising the structure. This level of technical complexity was what finally convinced the FIA to accept the piece, although not without conditions. The commissioners made it clear that random inspections will be carried out throughout the weekend, including load tests at the paddock before and after each session. Ferrari will have to demonstrate again and again that his spoiler meets the legality parameters both cold and under thermal stress, where the dilation of materials can alter structural behavior. And that adds an extra level of tension to the equipment. Because beyond the performance on the track, Ferrari now runs a race against the bureaucracy stopwatch. Any formal complaint of another team, any filtered photograph, any clip on board where excessive flexion is perceived could trigger a review. The possibility of a subsequent disqualification, as has happened in previous seasons with other equipment, is not remote. And the damage to the image in the middle of the house would be irreparable. That is why Ferrari plays it. Because if there is a place where an innovation is worth the risk, it is in Monza. If there is a weekend where Ferrari must remind the world why it is the biggest team in history, it is this. Because Monza is not a race. It is a statement. A promise that whatever happens in the rest of the calendar, the house of the rampant Cavallino will never witness a surrender. Monza has always been an unpredictable circuit. Its design, so simple in appearance, hides a tactical complexity that very few dominate. The infinite lines, the violent braking, the chicanas where everything is decided in thousandths. This route does not forgive mistakes. And when combined with the emotional weight that Ferrari drags this weekend, which can be expected on Sunday, goes far from a simple sports result. The big question that the entire paddock is going through is whether the new SF25 rear spoiler will meet expectations in career conditions. We do not speak only of peak speed in classification, something that we will undoubtedly see in practices and the quali, but of consistency in stint largo. Because a car can fly on the line, but it compromises braking stability or lateral grip in fast curves such as parabolic, the result will be disastrous. That is the thin line that Ferrari has decided to cross, between the potential of a heroic victory and the danger of an ungovernable car in real competition conditions. But there is a risk that cannot be ignored. If the spoiler suffers unexpected deformations during the Grand Prix, or if the commissioners detect an anomaly through the onboard cameras, Ferrari could face a formal protest from another team. In that case, any result obtained on the track would be under review. A post-carrier disqualification in Monza would be the most devastating blow imaginable. Not only would the points lose, they would lose the narrative. So what is played Ferrari this Sunday are not just positions in the classifier. It is the technical validation of its riskiest bet of the year. It is the trust of its pilots. It is the credibility before his tifosi. And perhaps also the legitimacy of his 2026 project, which needs to close this chapter with pride, not with shame. So we reach this crucial point. The question is no longer whether Ferrari can win in Monza. The real issue is it worth risking everything for a single race? Is it worth altering the technical course of a whole season, curbing the development of the car of the following year, and putting into play the credibility of the team only to seek the glory of one day? And if it is, what message would Ferrari be sending to the rest of the world? Now I want to know what you think. Do you think this Ferrari's radical bet will be enough to stop McLaren and Red Bull? Or do you think they are overvaluing the importance of Monza at the expense of compromising the future? Is this a brilliant play or a strategic error disguised as romanticism? Leave me your opinion in the comments.